Hey, clean my car, will ya? It'd be embarrassing to show the relatives a dirty car, right?
The whole thing started with such words from my husband. The day before the memorial service at my in-laws, I was ordered to clean the car. If he thought it was embarrassing, he should have done it himself since he was off work. I sighed in dismay, as he always pushes the troublesome tasks onto me while he takes it easy. Reluctantly starting to clean the car's interior, I stumbled upon something unbelievable. A woman's earrings and filled out divorce papers and marriage application form. Of course, none of them were mine. The name written on the marriage document was unknown to me. It was his mistress's name. My husband was having an affair. My head went blank for a moment, but then I smirked at the corner of my mouth. How kind of him to leave such essential information. A chuckle escaped, echoing inside the car. It was interrupted by the vibration of the smartphone in my pocket. The screen showed a message from Tom's mother, Susan. I placed the documents on the seat, and instead of replying, I called her directly. My name is Michelle, 33 years old. I'm a working housewife living with my husband, Tom, who is a year older than me and whom I married 4 years ago. His family runs a general store, and I usually help out while working part-time at a nearby supermarket. Tom doesn't work at the store but is in sales at a major corporation.
A general store, huh? I bet it doesn't make much money. I don't feel like taking over a shop like that.
He says such things, showing his dislike for the store. I don't work at the general store every day, but I like it there, and it bothers me whenever he belittles it.
Thanks for always helping out, Michelle.
You're really a lifesaver.
Every time I go to help, my in-laws always express their gratitude warmly. I liked both their personalities and the warm atmosphere of the store. It wasn't just his belittling of the store. There were other things about Tom I wished he would change. We moved to a suburban house when our daughter Emily was born, but he uses his job as an excuse and hardly participates in household chores and childcare. And I work too. Sorry, Tom, I can't step away right now. Can you go shopping for me? When I was busy with Emily and asked him on his day off, he would always make a face as if he didn't want to. He would be lying on the sofa, messing with his smartphone, seemingly free.
What? Of course not. I'm tired from work. Let me rest on my day off.
Then, can you watch her while I go out? He nodded reluctantly, so I left Emily with him and went shopping. Our house is in a location with poor public transport, so having a car is essential. Thus, I own a compact car, while Tom has a larger family car. However, it's rarer for the three of us to go out in the car together. Tom doesn't like going out with us, and most of the time, it ends up being just Emily and me. Even if I ask him to help a bit more with the household and child care, he brushes it off. One day, after repeating such things, I got a message from Susan. It was about soon holding the memorial service for my husband's grandfather. I generally made it a point to attend gatherings at my in-laws. I wanted to show my face as much as possible for my in-laws, who I owe much to, and it wasn't hard because many of the relatives are kind. While we were heading to my in-laws' house in Tom's car to discuss this, I felt a slight discomfort. Something inside the car seemed a bit off. The passenger seat was slightly shifted, and the smell was somewhat different. These were trivial things, but oddly nagging. Feeling uneasy, I casually asked, Why does the inside of the car look different from usual? Did you give someone a ride or something?
Yeah, I gave a colleague a lift. We had to go to the same place during work.
Tom replied in a tone as if making small talk. I remembered him complaining about using his car for work, as he also uses it for commuting and sometimes has to go to sales visits with it.
Why do I have to use my own car? Wish they'd let me use a company car.
I see, that's what it was, and I was relieved. He didn't seem to be in any particular hurry, and I exhale, relieved that I was mistaken. A little later, Tom's overtime started to increase gradually. He used to come home by 7 p.m., as his regular off was at 6, but it became more common for him to return after 9, sometimes even past 10 or 11. Maybe because of the fatigue, his face looked sullen when he came home, almost as if he was radiating a "don't talk to me" vibe. Worried that I might provoke him by speaking carelessly, our conversations as a couple dwindled. Naturally, Emily was asleep by that time, and the already limited interaction with her vanished.
If you're going to neglect the household, you might as well quit your job and help out.
He said it out of the blue. Despite having continuously worked part-time and helped at my in-laws, this was the first time he had spoken to me so harshly. Maybe he had become easily explosive over trivial matters. Even so, I felt angry, thinking he was being too harsh. I had not neglected the household chores. I argued that I had been doing the cleaning and laundry as usual and had prepared proper meals.
And what exactly is done properly? The clothes aren't folded right, and there are books not put back on the shelf. How can you say everything is perfect?
He nitpicked and complained. I hadn't changed the way I did household chores. Moreover, it was usually he who left things out and didn't tidy up. Frustration with him was growing inside me. Perhaps sensing the increasing tension between us, Emily seemed to cry more frequently than before. I tried to be mindful to improve things, but I would get irritated, unable to endure Tom's constant nagging and snide remarks. Around this time, I began to receive certain suggestions from my in-laws about the general store and Tom. A few weeks later, on the morning before the day of the memorial service.
Hey, clean my car, will ya? It'd be embarrassing to show the relatives a dirty car, right?
I had been ordered by him to do so. If he thought it was embarrassing, he should have done it himself since he was off work. I sighed in dismay, as he always pushes the troublesome tasks onto me while he takes it easy. Reluctantly, I started cleaning the interior of the car. Checking under the passenger seat for any trash, I noticed something. Reaching out, I picked up a hairpin and several pieces of paper. The hairpin was immediately recognizable as mine. Probably dropped and slid under the seat while I was sitting there. But what about these papers? They were receipts, all unfamiliar to me. Printed on them were a gas station logo, date and time of visit, and purchased items. Definitely not mine. The reason being, the store name listed was one I usually don't visit. It might be around the area where Tom goes for work. Slightly puzzled, I decided to continue cleaning. This time I looked under the driver's seat, and again something had fallen out. I picked it up and found it to be a pair of sparkling earrings. I don't usually wear jewelry. I thought that a pair of earrings shaking in my arms would attract Emily's interest, and she would pull them away. Besides, I could not rule out the possibility that Emily might accidentally ingest the earrings if she dropped them somewhere in the house. That is why I did not have many accessories in the first place. Even if I did, it would only be in a drawer where Emily could not reach it. So who owns the things in my hands now? I remembered that I had felt something strange in the car before. Thinking about it, I think the smell at that time was a woman's perfume. It's not like I would lose something as obvious as earrings in the car. In other words, she may have left the scent or dropped the earring on purpose to make me notice her. Is this a declaration of war? I opened the storage compartment on the dashboard, feeling that if I looked for something else I would find it. I opened the dashboard compartment, expecting to find something else. To my surprise, I found a completed divorce and marriage certificate in there. Tom's name was in the husband column of the marriage certificate. And in the wife column, the name of a woman I did not know was written. My mind went blank for a moment. I had been thinking that it was suspicious when his overtime work began to increase rapidly. But this was a woman's shadow, no matter what I thought. I could already say that this was evidence of an affair. Even though I had a thinly veiled suspicion, I was puzzled when I finally saw something like this. But it was only for a moment. I twisted the edges of my lips into a grin. How kind of them to go out of their way to tell me their names and other necessary information. And I can't help but laugh at Tom's dumbness. I don't know if he didn't even consider the possibility that I might open the storage. But why did he do it in such a way as to give me the evidence? A giggle leaks out and echoes through the car. It is interrupted by the vibrating sound of the smartphone in my pocket. Displayed on the screen was a message from Susan. I placed the file on the seat, and instead of replying, I called her directly.
Michelle, what's wrong? Is there something you want to check?
Yes, it's not about the memorial service. It's about Tom. At my serious tone, I heard Susan gasp. Telling the kind-hearted Susan about her son's affair might hurt her, but it was something that needed to be said. I told her about finding the divorce and marriage documents in the car.
Michelle, can you come here in Tom's car right away?
After a few seconds of silence, Susan murmured in a resolute tone. Tom had fallen asleep after ordering me to clean the car, so now was my chance. I went back inside, got Emily ready, and left the house. Upon arriving at my in-laws, my husband's parents greeted me with smiles. But their expressions were slightly strained, seemingly hiding their shock about their son's affair. As I was ushered into the living room, I laid out the evidence I found in the car on the table. Receipts, hearings, and the divorce and marriage documents. As the table filled up, their eyes widened more and more.
Have you checked the dash cam? Maybe there's something recorded on it.
Encouraged by my father-in-law, James, I decided to go back to the car to check. The recorder was designed to capture not only the front view during driving, but also the interior of the car. Pressing the play button, hoping to see the face of the mistress, my heart was pounding fast. I had mixed feelings of wanting and not wanting to check. However, regardless of what was on my mind, the images began to flow. Not only the image of his lover, but also the scene of the act in progress was recorded on the screen. My in-laws were completely appalled, looking away from the screen or closing their eyes tightly in disgust.
So it is true.
James muttered. I immediately stopped the video, as playing it all the time seemed to make me sick too.
I'm really sorry for what our son has done.
You should divorce him. He's no good.
Despite being entirely blameless, my in-laws bowed deeply, apologizing. They had suspected something off about Tom all along. In fact, the two of us were thinking of closing the restaurant around the time we got married. This was because sales were sluggish. However, sales began to grow after I started helping out. When I learned that Susan enjoyed making accessories as a hobby, I set up a website for the store and introduced it to the public, which became very popular, and the store's sales began to increase little by little. 4 years later, things were going well, and my parents-in-law decided to leave me in charge of the store and go behind the scenes. They discussed this with Tom when he came home late. The in-laws had been conducting various investigations for the procedure and learned of Tom's infidelity. The recorder alone would have been enough evidence, but we were able to gather various other items as well.
Now I could get a divorce on his behalf. Feel free to demand alimony from him.
I decided to divorce on the spot. And since I also had the divorce papers just in time, I finished filling out my part of the form and went to submit it. Of course, the fact that Tom and his adulterer had also filled out the marriage certificate means that they had originally intended to divorce me and be together right away. After completing the filing, I also contacted my own parents and explained the situation.
Michelle, are you okay?
I couldn't allow them to hurt our precious daughter.
They were both concerned and furious with Tom for having an affair. They also told me to take Emily and come back to my parents' house. The next day, I received a phone call from Tom. I could easily imagine that it was probably an angry call from him for not attending a memorial service at his parents-in-law's house on that day.
Hey, where are you? Why didn't you attend the memorial service?
As expected, Tom yells at me as soon as the call is initiated. It was so loud that I even heard a crackling sound. But I was not intimidated by it and answered in a matter-of-fact manner. Why? Because I'm no longer your family, so I don't need to be there, right? Plus, James and Susan should know about this.
Huh? What are you talking about? Don't joke around.
It made no sense. At that moment, he raised his voice again.
You're the one joking.
James must have been nearby and heard the conversation, as his scolding voice came through the phone. Susan seemed to be there too, as her voice could also be heard.
Do you even understand how much you've been tormenting Michelle?
For her sake, you should divorce quickly and set her free.
At the mention of torment, realizing his affair was exposed, his previously bold voice changed to one of panic.
Hey, sorry, I don't want to divorce. Please.
Though it wasn't a video call and I couldn't see his face, I heard the sound of him sniffling, possibly crying. But it was meaningless to act like this now. The divorce papers have already been filed. Besides, he was already married to another woman.
What do you mean by divorce papers? And another woman?
He sounded puzzled by what I was saying. Since everything was out in the open, there was no use in him trying to deceive anymore. Tom fell silent as if deep in thought, and I told him there was nothing more to discuss and hung up the phone. A month later, Tom visited me, seeming furious. His emotions were all over the place, irritated, then crying in panic, and suddenly angry again, making me think distantly how intense his mood swings were. Well, we're divorced, so technically he's a stranger now.
You filing those papers on your own has caused me a lot of trouble. Take responsibility.
Hearing this, I almost laughed but managed to keep a composed face. In fact, when I checked the dash cam, I saw Tom and his mistress, Marissa, joking around and filling out the divorce and marriage documents.
So, make sure you dispose of these properly.
Sure, I got it.
Marissa had pretended to throw away the marriage document, but when Tom was not around, she secretly stashed it in the dashboard. From the investigation into Tom's conduct, it turned out Marissa was a coworker, already divorced, and wanting to remarry him, so she deliberately left the papers to provoke me. It was just your mistress's provocation, I said in a cold voice, and he bit his lip, looking frustrated. He probably hadn't planned on staying with Marissa in the long run. His instruction to dispose of the marriage application form conveyed that much. Oh, and about the house mortgage. He looked puzzled, wondering how we had gone from discussing the affair to the house. All this time, I've been covering the mortgage with my salary. But now that I no longer live there, I don't have to pay, right? My income included a part-time work at the supermarket, but the general store made more money. Even though it was a suburban house, the amount was substantial. Tom looked dissatisfied, realizing I had been covering most of it.
What do you mean? That store can't be making that much money.
He still seemed to look down on the store. Snorting and narrowing his eyes, he glared at me. He might think I was bluffing, but unfortunately for him, this was the truth. I pulled out my bank book, opened it, and thrust it in front of him. He blinked repeatedly, scanning the same spot over and over. He rubbed his eyes vigorously, then squinted, taking his time to thoroughly check each figure. He seemed to find it unbelievable that I had earned that much money. His head dropped in dismay, but then he quickly looked up and approached me aggressively.
Right, my parents run that store, right? So it makes more sense for me, their blood son, to take it over, not some outsider like you.
Faced with his sudden nonsensical claim, I narrowed my eyes at him. What is he trying to say now? After all this time belittling the store and saying he wouldn't take it over, he must have been blinded by the prospect of money. However, I've already taken over the rights, so he can't inherit it. I've already inherited the rights, so I won't hand them over to you. I said this while thrusting the store-related documents at him. They were clearly signed by me and my in-laws.
So, then,
He looked down and then up to the sky, moving his head frantically as if searching for words. Then, as if he had found what he wanted to say, he looked straight at me and spoke.
let's remarry.
What? I had absolutely no intention of getting back with someone who had an affair. It was clear that he had no lingering feelings for me. He was just after the money. Absolutely not. Besides, you're already married to another woman, right? With that, I sent him away. Remembering that I had filed the marriage application form, he knelt on the ground as if in despair and groaned. Thanks to the evidence from the infidelity investigation and the dash cam provided by my in-laws, I was able to proceed advantageously and received a significant amount of alimony. Of course, I also claimed child support for Emily. At this point, he had incurred debts, but to make matters worse, Marissa's former husband, Ken, also demanded compensation from him. The reason Marissa was divorced in the first place was that her affair with Tom had been exposed long ago. Marissa and Tom were initially just colleagues. As they talked more about work, Marissa became interested in him. She was the first to get serious, wanting to be with Tom and deliberately acting in a way that would expose their affair. However, unlike my case, She did not leave any physical evidence, so the other party was not identified. I handed the evidence I collected to Ken, enabling him to claim alimony. Tom was forced into a debt-ridden life. Although he had a salary from a major corporation, it wasn't enough to cover everything. He had to repay the debt little by little while working, unable to spend on clothing or hobbies. Marissa was also claimed for compensation by me and Ken, plunging her into despair. Without money, the two of them lived in a cheap apartment, constantly fighting.
It's your fault we got caught. Why did you deliberately leave evidences?
Unable to rebut, Marissa would just sulk and lash out at things. Their shouting could be heard through the thin apartment walls, and they lived under the scornful gaze of other residents. Meanwhile, I was living a busy but fulfilling life, actively managing a general store. James helped with business consulting, and Susan dedicated herself to crafting. Susan recently started a craft workshop in a corner of the general store, which has been very successful. I am sure the store will continue to grow. With this thought, I smiled as I imagined a happy future.
I decided to marry you because I thought you were a wealthy president's daughter, even though you're plain. But I don't need a woman who makes only $6 an hour. Dumb wife, get out of the house.
I'm sick of being mothered by someone like you. I don't need a low-income old lady. Please leave.
They smirked at me while saying such things, as if leaving no room for argument. My belongings had already been packed into cardboard boxes and trash bags placed beside them. I had a lot to say, but my heart was too shredded to talk back. So, you want to divorce me and have me leave this house, right?
That's right. I'm glad you're understanding.
Once you're gone, Dad can finally be happy.
Fine, but you two will regret this. I wasn't so nice as to stay silent after being told all this. They will surely regret my leaving this house. My name is Susan Johns. I'm a 50-year-old office worker. I've been working at my father's company while raising my daughter, Lily, alone and managing household chores for over a decade. I married Bill, my husband, 10 years ago. Our meeting was through work. Bill was a sales representative for a client, and I always found him easy to talk to. He wasn't my type looks-wise, but I, not great at making friends, was secretly drawn to the bright and always smiling Bill. During that time, Bill confessed, and we started dating. At first, I was intimidated by the thought that we weren't a match, but he said, "Your shy nature and domesticity are charming." Our relationship was smooth and enjoyable. But one day, Bill dropped a bombshell.
Actually, I have a daughter who's 10.
This confession came 6 months into our relationship, right when Bill proposed. What? The news that Bill had a child was completely unexpected. I knew he was divorced before we dated, but I never imagined he had a child. I was thrilled about the proposal, but honestly, I was more bewildered. But Bill would take me to nice restaurants and places with beautiful night views. He always had something positive to say to me, the pessimist. Life with him would surely be fun. I fought, and I started wanting to marry him.
Stay away from a divorced man with a child. It's bound to make you suffer.
I face strong opposition from my strict father. Still, Bill promised, I will definitely make you happy. Believing that I could overcome any difficulty with Bill, we got married despite my parents' opposition. But I wish I could tell my past self that you should listen to what your parents said. Otherwise, you'll end up seeing hell. As we were getting married, I worried about whether I could get along with Bill's daughter, Lily, and whether I, who had never raised a child, could truly become a mother. The first day I met Lily. Nice to meet you, I'm Susan.
Nice to meet you, I'm Lily. Come in quickly.
She greeted me with a smile, grabbed my arm, and led me to the living room.
You're a daughter of President, right? Wow, that's impressive. So cool.
Her eyes sparkled with innocence, and it touched my heart. I could tell she was a really good kid. That day, I cooked a homemade meal. I went all out, preparing lots of dishes that kids would like. Lily stuffed her mouth with food and kept saying, "Delicious," over and over. I remember being so happy.
Susan's cooking is amazing. It's nothing like Dad's. To eat this every day would be the best.
She seemed to have accepted her father's remarriage surprisingly easily.
What are you talking about, Lily? Dad's cooking is good too, right?
Well, it's always the same dishes, and they're bland. Susan's cooking is way better.
Now, I'm going to cry. You're making me sad.
They joked and teased each other like that. I could see they were a close-knit family. Also, let's talk about our family finances. My husband is just an average employee at a small to medium-sized company. While I am a president's daughter, I've worked long at my father's company, holding a position and earning a decent income. So, our family's finances largely depended on my salary. There was an understanding that my husband would actively take on household and parenting duties, so I never really had any complaints. Whoever can earn should do so, which was our family's approach. That's why I started by replacing my single-use furniture and appliances with family-friendly ones to make life easier for Lily and Bill, aiming to quickly become a full-fledged family member. The same went for our living situation. During my single days, I lived in an apartment owned by my father's company. It was too large for just me, so they decided to move into my apartment. And that's how the new life for the three of us, me, Bill, and Lily, began. When Lily first visited my apartment, she ran around, excitedly shouting, "It's so spacious, amazing." Seeing her like that, I vowed to do my best in parenting and work, hoping she would grow up to be a fine adult. Life with the three of us was stress-free, peaceful, and fun. Blood relation didn't matter. We three were a real family, looking forward to life ahead. However, reality was not so sweet. As Lily entered middle school, her attitude towards me began to change. She joined the badminton club in middle school. It was a club, passionate about practice, so she was at school during the day and at club activities from evening to night, gradually spending less time at home. On days off from club activities, she would come home from school, throw her bag on the sofa, and just play with her phone. That's when the distance between Lily and me began to grow. Even when I tried to talk to her, she wouldn't even nod, let alone face me. When I discussed Lily's attitude with my husband, he said, "It's just her being rebellious because she's in middle school, don't worry about it," and I thought it would settle down after a while. But no matter how long I waited, her attitude didn't change. I continued to try engaging with Lily, but the response was lackluster, and sometimes she would sigh deeply and say, "What? Don't talk to me," completely rejecting me. Even when watching TV together in the living room, Lily would only talk to Bill. It was as if she didn't hear anything I said. Yet, when she needed something, like, "Hey, I need this for club activities tomorrow, can you wash it?" she would talk to me. At other times, I was like air to her. Still, I tried to meet Lily's demands, not wanting our relationship to drift further apart. However, I also worked at a job that didn't just require weekends off. I was on a shift schedule and often swamped with work, even on my days off. My job was demanding, sometimes requiring me to telework, even on holidays. I don't dislike my job, and I'm thankful that I can work, but the busier work got, the more inevitable it was that I couldn't always meet Lily's demands. When I was trying to cook dinner after work, she would ask me to buy a cake in front of the station, or to make a different dish, saying, "I don't like this side dish, make hamburgers instead." Every time I said no, Lily would make a displeased face, clicking her tongue and saying, "Useless, do it if you're a mother," before storming off to her room. Lately, my daughter often says, "A mother would do this, right?" I've said it many times, but on the family register, I'm Lily's mother, although Lily and I are not blood related. I have always tried to earn Lily's acceptance, but I still feel she doesn't recognize me as her mother. Every time Lily says that, I blame myself for not being able to meet her demands and fall into self-loathing. The same goes for my relationship with my husband. Bill was very kind and full of smiles when we first met, trying to get my attention. However, it seems he's the type who doesn't feed the fish once caught, as his attitude towards me cooled off after a year of marriage. We no longer felt like a close couple, but more like mere cohabitants. So I tried to get his attention by suggesting, "How about we go on a date, just the two of us?" But he rejected it, saying, "A date? We have a daughter, Lily. It's weird to talk about dating. What would Lily think?" I wanted to remind him that we dated, even though he had a child when we met. But saying that would only make him angry again. What troubled me most was the reckless spending of Bill and Lily. I earn a good salary from my father's company, holding a position there. Yet, due to their spending, we hardly save any money. I've repeatedly pointed this out to both of them, but they never tried to improve. Not only that,
You're so stingy.
She's such a terrible woman.
they even started saying that I'm not having a happy marriage life. However, I tried to convince myself that perhaps this is just what marriage is like, as I married for the first time after turning 40. Time flew by, and before I knew it, I turned 50. Lily has turned 21, and today we are throwing a celebration party for her. Turning 21 signifies reaching adulthood, a milestone that represents stepping into a new stage as an adult. In our area, we celebrate it in a big way too. It should be a joyous occasion to celebrate my important daughter's 21st birthday. However, I couldn't feel genuinely happy. I remembered the day we first met when I thought, I'll do my best in parenting so she can grow into a respectable adult. On the day of the celebration, I took the day off work, prepared the dress as my daughter had requested, and also made an appointment at the beauty salon. I was fully prepared for the celebration, getting up early in the morning to drive my daughter. After getting dressed and ready, seeing Lily's glamorous appearance made me naturally break into a smile. "You look truly beautiful. You've become a lovely woman." My husband exclaimed, "Wow, Lily, you look great. Truly my daughter, the most beautiful one." Lily smiled only at her father, saying, "Thanks, Dad." However, she completely ignored my words. My husband was dressed in a suit, getting ready to head to the party venue. I had also put on nicer clothes than usual, intending to go to the celebration party with Lily and my husband. But then, what? Why is the old lady trying to come? "You absolutely must not come to this ceremony," she sharply told me. My daughter, calling me old lady and hurling insults. Wait, but I wanted to go, since my daughter is dressed so beautifully. Even though I tried to keep smiling despite the harsh words, it seemed to have the opposite effect.
So annoying. You're a fake mother. Stop pretending to be my mom. Don't call me your daughter. Just don't come, okay? I don't want my friend to think my mom is such a plain woman.
She shooed me away with her hands. I wondered if this behavior was truly that of a respectable adult. A fake mother, huh? I wondered if I had gone wrong somewhere in raising her. Duh. I let out a big sigh. They ended up going without me. Left with no choice, I decided to spend my time leisurely at home. But with my schedule suddenly cleared and nothing to do, I decided to head to the office and work. It was a stark realization of how much of a workaholic I am. After finishing work reasonably early, I returned home to find my husband sitting on the sofa, frowning and with his arms crossed. His unusual demeanor gave me a sense of unease. "What's wrong?"
Why didn't you tell me?
"Tell you? About what?"
Your father's company is on the verge of bankruptcy. They've significantly downsized their business in America, hadn't they?
It seems my father's company no longer does business with my husband's company, so he wasn't aware of the details, but he apparently picked up on these rumors from somewhere. Bankruptcy crisis, that doesn't sound quite right. But I am aware of the downsizing in America. I wanted to discuss it, so I was planning to talk after the celebration party.
What? You were just planning to talk about it. What about the salary? What's going to happen with it?
It seemed he only worried about my salary. The salary might decrease until things settle down, I guess.
What? You're joking. Lily is still going to college, right? How are we going to handle the tuition?
We have the tuition covered. Besides, I tried to explain the situation with my father's company and why the salary might decrease, but my husband wouldn't listen at all.
Enough. You can turn money, and you can't even get along with your own daughter. You really are a failure as a mother.
His words, a failure as a mother, pierced my heart. It's true that my salary had decreased, and I couldn't even pretend to have a good relationship with my daughter. Being so bluntly denied, my place shook me.
I need to rethink our future together.
Saying so, he slammed the door loudly as he left the house. I also wanted to rethink our future. I had intended to have a proper discussion after Lily's celebration was over. Why does nothing ever go right? The next day was busier than usual at work, so I decided to stay late before heading home. Bill used to say that the one who earns more should work and the other should cook if they get home early, but that promise had long been broken. Assuming there would be no dinner prepared at home again today, I decided to buy ready-made meals to get by. When I arrived home, I found Bill and Lily smirking about something. Usually, they would just watch TV or stay in their rooms when I got back, so their behavior was noticeably odd. Their reaction was as if they had been waiting for me to return. But it didn't seem welcoming. I had a bad feeling about this. My bad premonitions like this always tend to come true. And today was no exception.
You're finally back. Took you long enough.
Really? You're so late. We got tired of waiting.
Well, I've been a bit busier recently with new tasks at work. But what's going on, both of you?
Here, take this.
He threw a large package at me.
Open it and see.
Is this? When I opened the bag, of course, there was no present inside. I found it filled with my clothes and cosmetics. What in the world? I couldn't understand, my farts failing to catch up. Then my daughter said, "Come this way," and led me to a room at the back of the living room. Opening the door, I saw many of my belongings packed into cardboard boxes and trash bags.
Geez, Mom, you have too much stuff. It was tough to pack everything up, you know.
I even took time off work to do this. Really tired me out.
That's funny. Poor Dad.
Watching them laugh together, I finally understood their intention. You want me to leave?
That's right. Lily and I have been discussing this for a while.
Yeah, Mom, your father's company is in serious trouble, right? And your salary has decreased, hasn't it? No use hiding it. I heard everything from Dad.
No, that's...
Really, your role in this house is over.
That's right. We don't need someone who can turn money anymore.
Without giving me a chance to speak, it seemed they were both intent on blaming me. They spoke so rapidly that I couldn't find a moment to interject, and just listened with my head down. As I remained silent, they seemed to forget my presence, and their true feelings spilled out.
I married you because I thought you were a daughter of president, only to find out it was a complete misfortune.
Exactly. I thought I could live in a fancy apartment and be a rich kid, accepting a plain-faced mom like you, only to be scolded for spending too much. With this face, I can't even tell my friends you're my mom.
What are you both saying? I managed to interject with a feeble voice. But this only fueled their momentum.
I can say it now. I married you for help with child care and money.
What? I couldn't believe what I was hearing.
My ex-wife was terrible at parenting. She couldn't earn or handle child care, went into postpartum depression, and that's why my first marriage failed. I took custody of Lily because she mattered to me, but as a mere employee at a small company, I thought I couldn't raise her alone. So I looked for someone plain who seemed to have some money and wouldn't betray me. Then it turned out there was someone who fit the bill perfectly, and that someone was you.
You're kidding. I married you against my parents' wishes.
You're such an idiot. You'd blush at any compliment. It was so easy to win you over. And I even married you.
That's cruel.
Who's cruel here? A failing company is just too much. I saw your recent pay slips. You're making like $6 an hour. It's the worst. Now that Lily is all grown up, we don't need a low-income, dumb wife. Get out of the house.
My wage is $6 an hour. What are they even talking about? I couldn't make sense of any of it. As I silently pondered, my daughter continued, echoing my husband's sentiments. I'm so tired of having a mother like you. We don't need a low-income old lady. Please leave. Their cruel words shattered my heart. They've been feeling that way. I never realized that. I wanted to say so much, but I no longer had the energy. So, you want to divorce me and have me leave this house, right?
That's right. I'm glad you're understanding.
Poor Dad, hurt and deceived by this woman. Finally, you can be happy.
I wondered why my daughter hated me so much. I don't recall doing anything to deserve such harsh words from either my husband or my daughter. My daughter seemed to despise me intensely, glaring at me with a demonic expression. Seeing her like this, my husband smirked with satisfaction. I felt anger boiling up inside me at the sight of my husband's smug expression. I'm not so kind-hearted as to stay silent after being treated this way. Surely, they will regret it when I leave this house. I began preparing to leave immediately.
Oh, so you're really going to leave. It looks like you finally realized you're a burden in this house. It took long enough.
My husband sarcastically moved my belongings to the entrance. Seeing my husband moving the bags, my daughter oddly sympathized with him, saying, "Dad is such a good-hearted person to help move the luggage."
We'll send the remaining items by cash on delivery later. But if you don't move your stuff out within a week, we'll dispose of everything, just so you know.
He suddenly told me to leave, set a deadline for moving out my belongings, and then he's now threatening to dispose of them if I don't meet the deadline. How incredibly selfish. Fine, but let me say this, you will definitely regret it. Be prepared. I said to my husband in the loudest voice I've ever used in my life.
Regret? No way.
He laughed, but I ignored him and left the house. That day, I decided to stay in the company-owned apartment. I planned to live there until I found a new place. Though I could have had my belongings sent, I didn't want my address known, so I waited for a chance when my husband and daughter were away to hire movers myself. As we both worked, our savings were split equally between us. My husband, with his spending habits, had no savings. As a result, a significant portion of the money I had saved ended up going to him, but that was the rule, so I had to comply. In the end, I handed over about $100,000. Well, I hope they used that money for my daughter's college expenses. That was the plan, anyway. And so, our divorce was finalized. My heart was torn until the divorce, but surprisingly, I felt more at ease and happier after it was done. My feelings were unexpectedly clear. It just shows how distorted my married life had been. 2 months after the divorce was finalized, I received a call from my ex-husband. I hesitated to answer, suspecting what it might be about, but curious about his predicament, I decided to listen for amusement.
Hey, what the hell is this about?
My ex-husband sounded quite panicked from the get-go. What's wrong? I had a pretty good idea what the issue was, but I asked anyway.
I've been told to leave this house by tomorrow. Why? It's our apartment, isn't it?
Of course, it's my company-owned apartment. It's clear that 2 strangers divorced from each other shouldn't be able to live together. It's quite obvious.
But even if you say that suddenly, I have no idea where to go next. Can you ask your father to let Lily and me continue living here?
What are you talking about? I was suddenly kicked out by you 2 months ago, with no place to go. Fo is completely unconcerned about that.
About that, I'm sorry. So, can you help us out?
No matter what you say, it's impossible. Is that all you wanted to say? I'm hanging up. Such a cheap apology surely won't make me forgive what happened that day. Even after our divorce, it seems this man still underestimates me to no end. As I was about to hang up, my ex-husband said, Wait, don't hang up. What now? Is there something else?
There's something I don't get. Recently, they decided to build a new high-rise near our house. The location is great, and from what I saw in the brochure, the amenities and space are impressive. When I looked into it, I found out it's owned by your company. What's the deal with that? I thought your company was in financial trouble. How could they afford to build such an amazing building?
Oh, that matter. My company started a new business 2 years ago, and it's been doing really well. There's no financial crisis. In fact, it has grown into a company with annual revenues of $30 million. So, buying that building was easy.
What? That can't be right. I thought your company in the US was gone, and wasn't your salary reduced?
The company in the US hasn't disappeared. It's just smaller now. It still exists. We're expanding our business internationally because the potential revenue outside of the US is much greater. The reduction in my salary was only temporary during this transition period. Our company has an incentive system. My father made sure to adjust so that other employees wouldn't face a salary cut, but since I'm family, I told them it was okay to reduce my salary temporarily. My base salary was sufficient to begin with, and besides, I already had a significant new role lined up for me.
Why didn't you explain such important things to me?
I tried to explain, but you never gave me the chance. Besides, it's common knowledge that my father's company is rapidly growing. You would have easily found out if you had done a bit of research. You just assumed the worst, didn't you?
Well, that's true, but
I mentioned I had a big job lined up, and that's because I'm going to be the president of my father's company.
President, you.
My ex-husband was so shocked that he suddenly raised his voice. His voice was so loud that I had to pull the phone away from my ear and furrowed my brow in annoyance, thinking to myself, so noisy. Yes, I just need to live in the UK for a while to be the president. It's more convenient to work there. I delayed making a decision because you and Lily were still around. I thought I would discuss it with both of you once Lily's celebration party was over and things had settled down. My ex-husband seemed at a loss for words, and no response came from him. He fell silent, probably stunned. Hello, are you listening? By the way, after you guys abandoned me, I gladly accepted the offer to become the president. I've already set the date for moving to the UK, and soon I'll be the president of a company with annual revenues of $30 million.
That's ridiculous. Unbelievable. Even during the property division, it was only $100,000. It's a large amount, but nowhere near $30 million. Such wealthy people are not common.
Indeed, that would be the norm. Companies with annual revenues exceeding $30 million are rare. However, the situation changes on a global scale. It is said that the salary gap between presidents of companies that operate internationally and those that don't can be tens of times different. Our company has not been limited to the US for a long time. It has been able to grow so much because we have expanded our business internationally. All my savings were managed under my father's name because you and Lily were so reckless with money. So, I decided to entrust most of my salary to my dad, who I knew could successfully manage and invest it.
But I saw a payslip with a salary of $6 per hour. What was that about?
Oh, I remember you mentioned that. I thought about it afterward, wondering what you were referring to. I realized it was probably the payslip of a part-time cleaner working for us, and that's from years ago. The company has been concerned that the wages for part-time employees might be too low, so I was conducting a review. I was looking back at all the past wages. The payslip you saw is probably from years ago. Now, the minimum wage everywhere is over $9, so it's clear that $6 an hour just isn't possible anymore, if you think about it. I couldn't help but laugh at the absurdity. If he had looked closely at the payslip, he would have noticed the different name and date. He must have been desperately searching for something to use against me. Maybe that's the payslip he happened to see. But seriously, even a fool would notice that.
So, I've been mistaken all this time. I let a woman worth $30 million slip through my fingers.
Well, it looks that way. I'm hanging up now, and say hi to Lily for me. With that, I abruptly ended the call from my ex-husband. After that, I received numerous messages and relentless calls from my ex-husband, begging me to reconsider, but I ignored them all. Still, he was so persistent that I blocked him on everything yesterday. 3 months have passed since then. I am living in the UK now. Work has been extremely busy without a break, but I am grateful for the increased workload. With no personal troubles, I can engage in my work stress-free, so no matter how busy, it doesn't feel like a burden. Lily has called me several times since then.
I'm really sorry, Mom. When I entered middle school, Dad started bad-mouthing you, saying you were cheating or mocking me. I believed all that and blamed you for everything. I'm sorry for all the awful things I've said over the years.
Lily seemed genuinely remorseful, and I considered forgiving her, but her past behavior towards me, influenced by her father's words, was too harsh to simply overlook. I'd like to say it's understandable because it was what your father said, but you also had a part in this.
Even though I'm apologizing like this, you won't forgive me. You are my mother. Also, you are wealthy, right? Please, I can't lower my standard of living now that I'm used to having you around. Help me out. I'll go anywhere, even to the UK.
Lily's argument was that life was comfortable and somewhat affluent when I was around, without any inconvenience. But since I left, they were evicted from the apartment, and now she and her father are living in a small, cheap rental, struggling with their new life. However, her words, "You are my mother," echoed painfully in my ears, a reminder of the accusations I had faced before. It dawned on me that her apology might be momentary, not truly believing she was in the wrong. I couldn't side with Lily any longer. If her apology had been sincere, I would have forgiven her without hesitation. That's what parents do. They end up wanting to indulge their children. But our situation was different. Lily had ridiculed me for so long, it seemed impossible for her to be genuine and reconnect with me now. She had always been a child with high pride. Therefore, I decided it was time to stop being her mother. You said, "You're my mother," but you also told me not to act like a mother to you. So, I stopped doing that. I stopped acting like your mother. Sorry, but you are now a full-fledged adult. From now on, you need to live your life on your own. Good luck.
Wait, what? Are you abandoning your daughter? Without your help, I can't go to college, and my first paycheck will all go to rent.
You abandoned me first, remember. Besides, I gave your father $100,000. You shouldn't have to live so tightly, at least for now, right?
That money, Dad bought a car and I bought a designer bag, so there's hardly any left.
Lily said that, looking a bit awkward. It seemed that both my ex-husband and daughter, having lived comfortably on my salary, couldn't stop their lavish spending suddenly. But that's not my concern anymore. I don't care about that. I've made up my mind. You need to figure it out yourself. Goodbye. With that, I ended the call. However, I didn't intend to block my daughter. She is someone I've spent over a decade with, after all. If she ever genuinely finds herself in trouble and sincerely apologizes, putting aside her pride, then perhaps I'll be there to help. But that seems like a distant possibility. Life in the UK is busy and not easy, but I am happy now. Someday, I might plan a recreational trip to the US with my employees who live in the UK. Thinking about such things, I spend another peaceful day alone.
My name is Rachel Keller. I've been married for 10 years. My husband is a hard worker and very family-oriented. He's quite meticulous, and sometimes we go out as a family on his days off, just a regular family, really. He also treats my parents with great respect, and I think he's just the perfect husband. However, I recently caught him coming out of a hotel with his mistress. I couldn't believe my eyes, but it was unmistakably my husband, Stephen. The mistress looked younger than me, radiant. Oh, so he has someone he likes. That was my first thought. I'm pretty straightforward, often told by my parents that I'm super positive, clear and open. Perhaps because of this, my motto has always been to accept what comes and not chase what goes. When we got married, I had decided that if Stephen ever fell in love with someone else, I would gracefully step aside. And with all the men I've dated before, whenever they said they found someone else, I've always let go completely and moved on. So, it should be the same this time. But the fact is, seeing them arm in arm, looking so close, it really hurts. But there he is, looking so happy. Seeing my husband's face like that, I felt a storm raging inside me. So I approached them. Stephen, not expecting to run into his wife in front of the hotel, couldn't hide his shock.
Rachel.
Huh? Who's this?
The woman looked back and forth between me and Stephen, clearly puzzled. No wonder she was confused. Stephen.
Rachel, this is, well.
I was in the way of your happiness, wasn't I? Those were the words that came out of my mouth.
No, it's not like that. There's a reason for this.
It's okay. I'm sorry. With that, I turned on my heel. Stephen was shouting, "No, it's not what it looks like," but the woman clung to his arm, preventing him from chasing after me. I started running away from Stephen. After running for a while, when I was sure he wasn't following, I stopped to catch my breath. Then, I reflected on what had just happened. No matter how many times I think about it, him coming out of that hotel means it's an affair. Or maybe it's serious. If that's the case, then he has chosen someone else over me. I began to walk slowly, pondering how things got to this point. No matter how straightforward I am, the betrayal still hurts. Although I used to decide on breakups easily, now that we are married, separating is painful. But he has chosen someone else, so I guess it's inevitable. I tried to convince myself, but my vision blurred all the same. Before I knew it, tears were streaming down my face. Our marriage was blissful. Even when I was busy with work, Stephen never complained and willingly did the nursery drop-offs and pickups. When our child had a fever, he'd take time off work to care for her. He always accepted my suggestions to go out as a family on weekends with a smile. Despite some men boasting about being the breadwinner, he never did that. Instead, he appreciated that our lifestyle was possible because we both worked. That's why I was able to focus on my career, start my own company, and expand the business. Out of gratitude to him, I bought a new house for my in-laws and gave him more than enough pocket money. No matter how tired I was, I tried to handle housework, childcare, and work to prevent him from getting stressed. I made time to visit his parents' house and show them their grandchild. It was all for my husband, who always cared for me and for our family. I believed our life together would last forever. I strive to be a good wife for that very reason. But perhaps Stephen had some complaints. I've heard that a husband's affair is sometimes blamed on the wife. That it's the wife's fault, leading the husband to be captivated by another woman. In the end, it's all my fault. Perhaps he had grievances but just never expressed them. Maybe I was too complacent, thinking everything was fine and depending too much on him. If that's the case, then maybe separating is really for the best, for his sake. If I love him, I should cleanly break it off and wish for his happiness. I know this without anyone telling me. Yet, for some reason, the storm in my heart won't subside. Why? No matter how many times I ask myself, I can't find an answer. I keep walking, and seeing other couples makes the pain surge anew. I had that phase with him once, so where did it go wrong? Why did it come to this? I always thought family was the most important thing, but it seems he wanted to prioritize being a man over family. This is a betrayal. A betrayal of the marriage vow. The anger of being betrayed. Yet, what I feel is not anger but pain and sorrow. And regret for not being able to make my husband happy. How could this happen? Then, a new storm hit. What about our daughter? It's not just me who's been betrayed. What will happen to her? She adores her dad and thinks living with him is her happiness. Yet, he betrayed her too. Should I forgive him? Should I? Thinking of our child only deepens the agony. Lost, I find myself reflecting on our married life. Those happy 10 years. They weigh heavily on me. If only I could pretend I never saw it. If only I could act as if nothing happened. Would everything then stay the same? But can I truly call that happiness? As night fell, I walked towards the home where my daughter was waiting. When I saw the lights of our house, I stopped. And there, I made a decision for the sake of my daughter waiting for me. Stephen came home late at night. What had he been doing? Spending a pleasant time with his mistress, perhaps? While waiting restlessly for him, I cooked dinner as usual, fed our daughter, faked a smile to conceal my feelings, and put her to bed at 9 p.m. with a goodnight kiss. Was there ever a night as painful as this? No, even on nights when I was too tired to move, none were as painful as this. The storm inside calmed, leaving a gaping void in its place. A hole so deep and dark. As my daughter fell asleep, I placed the divorce papers on the table and waited for Stephen's return. When I saw the lights of the house, I turned back, thinking of the divorce papers I had picked up from the office. To think that in the 10th year, I'd be looking at such a document. I picked up the pen several times but couldn't write, sighing deeply. I had just finished writing my name. And then Stephen returned. I greeted him with a smile, welcome home.
Yeah, I'm back. Rachel, about what happened today.
Stephen must have been pondering how to start this conversation. He spoke as if making a resolution. Removing his coat, placing his bag down, his actions as usual.
It's not what you think.
Please stop. I don't need excuses. Because it's my fault, isn't it? I was desperately trying to smile.
Why? Why is it your fault, Rachel?
Because when a husband cheats, it's the wife's fault, right? Your heart wandered because I didn't understand you, Stephen. It's all my fault.
That's not true. And about her.
I'm sorry. When I hear excuses, I just get angry. I don't want to yell or fight. So, let's end this cleanly.
End it? Why?
Because you have someone you love, don't you? Why should I stay with you when you have someone else? That won't make you happy.
I don't want to leave you, Rachel. And there's our daughter Mary too. Don't talk about separating.
What are you saying? You chose her over me and Mary, didn't you? Yet you won't leave either of us. Don't you feel sorry for her? That's just sad for her.
No, it's different. It's not that serious with her.
Not serious? That's a lie. I don't know what kind of relationship you want, but I think she's serious. I've had you all to myself for 10 years. So now, I'll step aside for her. I think that's best for both of us. I want you to be happy.
I am happy enough.
Please, sign this. Your happiness is my happiness.
No, I'm sorry. Please, I don't want to break up this family.
It's not about breaking, Stephen. You're just starting a new life. I don't think of it as breaking. I love you so much that I just want you to be happy. Please sign this. I don't want to stand in your way any longer.
Rachel.
No matter how much Stephen said he didn't want a divorce or tried to talk about starting over, I had no intention of stopping the divorce. Finally, Stephen gave in and signed the papers.
I'm sorry, Rachel. It's all because I harbored feelings for another woman that I made you write this divorce paper.
It's okay, don't worry about it. Remember what I said when we got married? If you ever fell in love with someone else, we would part ways cleanly.
I never thought you could actually do it.
I never thought it would be this painful to decide to leave you. But if staying with me means you miss out on happiness, then it's better we part ways.
Why can you sacrifice yourself so much? You should be scolding me, throwing your anger at me. It would be easier for me.
You might find it easier, but I won't do something just to make you feel better. I don't want to end in a fight. If you and she can be happy, then that's my happiness. So I won't throw my emotions at you. I'm not that kind. I don't think of forgiving you for betraying our daughter. Being treated kindly can be painful, right?
You care about me that much. Rachel, you're like a goddess.
A goddess, huh? I wonder what happens when you betray a goddess. Divine retribution can be quite painful, you know. But then again, it's not a god but me, a human, who'll deliver it. Before we divorce, there's something I want to know.
What is it?
Why did you have feelings for another woman? What was wrong with me?
No, Rachel, there was nothing wrong with you. You were a perfect wife. It was just my weakness.
So, I wasn't at fault?
Yeah, maybe too perfect, if anything.
Too perfect?
Yeah, you were too perfect, and it made me lose confidence. Maybe that's why my feelings shifted towards something imperfect.
What? That's no excuse at all. So, can you tell me about her? Her name, age, what does she do?
Her name is Sarah Parker. She's 35. Works at a cafe. I used to frequent that cafe, and that's where we became acquainted. I thought she was cute and struck up a conversation. We started going out for meals, watching movies, and gradually, my feelings shifted.
She must be very cute then.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, thank you. You can have this luxury condo.
What?
I'll be taking custody of our daughter. That's enough for me. It's not easy to find a place like this, and you'd want to live in a nice home as newlyweds, right?
What will you do, Rachel?
I'll look for another apartment. But can you wait a week? I need that time to find a new place.
No, you should stay here, Rachel.
It's too big here. And living in this room, filled with our memories, would be too painful for me.
I see. All right, thank you. She'll probably be happy about it.
No, don't mention it. I'll fully support your happiness. I said this with a broad smile on my face. The next day, I visited my in-laws' house to apologize to George and Diana, who had always treated me like their own daughter and loved my daughter, for not being able to keep Stephen's heart. George, Diana, I'm really sorry. I couldn't hold on to Stephen's heart. It's all my fault.
He had an affair, really.
Yes, so I got him to sign the divorce papers. I'll be leaving the current apartment within a week. Then, he can remarry her with no holds barred.
How could this happen? Why divorce?
It's my fault. So, I thought stepping aside is the best way for Stephen to be happy.
It's not your fault, Rachel. He's the one who did wrong. Well, if you can't forgive that, then divorce is inevitable, I guess.
I'm truly sorry for being such an imperfect wife and causing George and Diana distress. I spoke earnestly, blaming myself for my husband's infidelity and apologizing sincerely. George and Diana understood and said it's Stephen who should be apologizing.
Poor Mary, if that's the case, it can't be helped.
Yes. I'll have custody of our daughter. I'm grateful to him for leaving her with me.
A mother's care is best, better than being raised by a stepmother.
Thank you. I expressed my gratefulness sincerely and left my in-laws' house, never to return. Leaving there, I went straight to the district court to submit the divorce papers. Then I began looking for a new apartment, moving out of the familiar condo within a week. After moving, I decided to meet with the mistress. She must have heard about the divorce from Stephen. She appeared before me, looking triumphant. You're Sarah Parker, right?
Yes, that's right.
I submitted the divorce papers about a week ago. I believe they have been accepted, so you can remarry now.
Huh?
You're planning to remarry, right?
Yes, I suppose. So, why did you want to meet me?
Just to inform you about the divorce. I have to make sure you know you can remarry since he might not have told you.
Huh, I knew about the divorce, but I didn't think you'd actually do that. Are you really that kind?
Well, who knows? But I've decided to support you too.
Why would you support us? I took your husband, you know?
True, you could say you took him, but he chose you. So, I've decided to support you too in finding happiness. If you don't become happy, then my stepping aside would be meaningless.
Huh, you really are strange.
She called me foolish. But Fu is truly the foolish one. I don't think affairs are as sweet as she believes. Do you know about my husband's job?
Job?
Yes, what does he do?
I don't know the details, but I know he was headhunted by a major company and became a department head.
Yes, that's right. He's a department head with a high salary.
Letting go of a man with such a high salary, are you okay with that?
I've lived with him for 10 years. Now it's your turn to be happy with him. I'm fine with it.
Such a kind person.
But I will take alimony and child support.
That's fine. He's a department head, after all. I don't know how much the alimony is, but it's probably nothing for him. Child support isn't much monthly either. Maybe he could pay the lump sum amount until your child reaches adulthood. That way, we can sever ties.
That would be helpful, but it should be until she graduates college, not just until she's an adult.
That's no problem at all. Don't you think he has enough money for that? If it means cutting ties with you, I'd prefer he pays it all at once.
Then please suggest that to him.
I will. He listens to everything I say.
Good. We've moved out, so you two should live in that luxury condo. Perfect for newlyweds, right?
He said he'd take the condo, so I guess that's where we'll live.
Stephen is a kind man who values family, so I believe you'll be happy.
I suppose so.
She looked at me triumphantly again. But if he were truly kind, this situation wouldn't have occurred. A genuinely family-oriented person wouldn't stray for such trivial reasons. She must think she'll be fine. It's not that simple. I wanted to flash a triumphant smile too, but it wasn't the time for that yet, so I just kept a small smile. But my praising Stephen seemed odd to her, prompting a question.
I get that you're a nice person, but how can you forgive being cheated on?
It's my fault for not keeping his interest on me. He said he hated my perfection. Must have felt suffocated, I guess. Not so perfect if I couldn't see that, huh?
You blame yourself, huh? But he's a catch, a department head. Aren't you worried about letting that go?
If you're happy, that's all that matters to me. I value happiness over money. Besides, he gave me custody. That's enough for me.
You really are strange, almost foolish.
Are you planning a wedding?
Of course.
Well, I know someone who owns a big wedding venue. Booking there usually takes months. Would you like me to put in a word? Might get you a discount.
Really? That would be great.
Yes, they have gorgeous wedding dresses too. You want a lavish wedding, right?
Sure, doesn't have to be cheap though. He's a department head after all. But I'd like to get married soon.
Got it. Let me know when you're ready, and I'll arrange everything.
Any time is good. We're ready to get married now.
That sounds exciting.
You're such a good person.
Am I? I hope it's the best wedding ever. That night, I heard from Stephen. He was excited, saying Sarah told him about the wedding venue arrangement.
You're handling the venue too?
Yes, my friend owns it. They said they'd make it the best wedding possible, even though it's usually a 6-month wait.
It's that busy.
Yes, it's a famous place. But they promised to make room for you.
Thank you. I don't know how to repay you. It's me who's at fault here.
It's fine. I'd do anything for your happiness.
I'll pay the alimony and child support in full. It's manageable.
Good to hear, that eases my mind.
Sarah is happy, but she hates that we're still connected. So, paying in full seems best.
I'm glad. That will make life easier for me.
I might pay a bit more for the alimony.
Really? Are you sure?
Yes, of course.
Just don't regret it later.
Huh?
Don't worry, seeing you two happy makes me happy too. 2 weeks later, a grand wedding was held, and Sarah was thrilled with her exquisite wedding dress. Sitting in the spotlight, Sarah and Stephen looked blissfully happy, like the happiest people in the world. I sat in the audience, smirking at the couple. After the wedding, as I saw them off to their honeymoon, I thought, now, the counterattack begins. They think they can be happy? You're being naive. Sure enough, when Stephen returned from the honeymoon and went to work, he found a disciplinary notice on his desk. Shocked by the sudden action, he rushed to the CEO's office. But the CEO said he didn't know the reasons as it was the chairman's decision. Stephen insisted, but couldn't change the outcome. Dejected, he gathered his belongings and left the company. When he got home, he found a bill from the wedding venue. Opening it, he called me, his voice almost a scream. His voice sounded like a scream, almost. Oh, Stephen, what's up?
I've been fired. Out of nowhere.
That's tough.
I don't understand why I was let go.
Really? No idea why.
None at all. I haven't made any big mistakes, and now this disciplinary action. The chairman made the decision, and I can even meet him to find out why. The CEO just tells me to leave.
Well, that's unfortunate, isn't it?
It's not just unfortunate.
But, come on, saying that.
And now, there's this huge bill from the wedding venue you introduced.
That makes sense. It was a grand wedding. Sarah's wedding dress alone must have cost around $40,000. I thought it was quite a pricey one you picked.
That's why the bill is so enormous. And on top of being fired.
But the venue can't be helped. Being fired and the venue are unrelated.
Can we get the venue price reduced?
That's impossible. They already gave us a friend's discount. Can't ask for more.
But I don't have the money now.
You had the money for such an expensive wedding, right?
That was before I get fired. And now I'm even getting billed for the condo rent.
Well, of course.
Why? Shouldn't it be paid for?
It's a rental, Stephen.
Rental? I thought we bought this condo.
Didn't you know? It's a rental. Since we could rent the luxury apartment for a reasonable price, I passed it on to you. You can't rent the penthouse in a tower for that amount, you know. But I don't need it. It's fine for a family, but it's just me and my daughter.
I can't believe it's a rental.
You thought you owned it?
Yes, exactly.
That's unfortunate. But now there's nothing you can do about it. If it bothers you, just move out.
She's complaining. Why do we have to move out of the luxury condo when we just got it? I told her we have no money, but she doesn't care. Plus, we paid for the honeymoon with credit cards, and the bill is coming in 2 months. There's no way we can pay it.
Well, that's your problem, not mine. You were the ones who spent the money.
But this means misery, not happiness. Can you lend us some? Give back the alimony and child support I paid in full. That way, we can get by for now.
No way, I'll never see that money again if I lend it to you.
Oh man. Why was I fired?
Because you had an affair.
What? How do you know the reason? If it's true, what a terrible chairman. Isn't firing someone over an affair too much?
Well, the company doesn't tolerate such behavior.
Why do you know all this?
Simple, because I'm the chairman.
What? No way. I knew you started a business, but chairman. How come it's my company? Huh?
Realized it? When you were thinking of quitting, why do you think a completely different company offered you a position as a head, huh?
I thought it was because of my skills.
Come on, that's not it. I arranged for your headhunting.
What? But you said you were just an office worker.
I started that company. Once it was on track, I wanted to focus on family, so I made my cousin the CEO. In exchange, I became the chairman and told you I was an office worker. That way, your pride was intact, and I could take care of our daughter.
This is insane. I was just dancing in your palm.
Exactly.
But firing me is too harsh.
You're the one who betrayed, remember?
You said you wanted me to be happy.
Yes, I wanted you to be happy. Now the shock of hitting rock bottom will be greater, right?
That's cruel.
Happiness has its downside. But you chose that woman, so you'll be fine, right? Good luck. Stephen kept saying, this can't be real, but I was smirking triumphantly. He kept contacting me to let him return to work, but of course, I refused. After enduring such frustration, why would I offer a helping hand now? There's no way I would do that. Ultimately, unable to find a job and faced with the enormous wedding and honeymoon bills, plus the alimony he owed Sarah, Stephen had to take out large loans. Forced by Sarah's insistence to stay in the luxury condo, they eventually had to move to a rundown apartment. Sarah is constantly ripping into Steven, saying, "This is such a scam," practically every day. Steven finally found a job at a small factory as a temporary worker. Ridiculed by colleagues, his pride shattered. Even working himself to exhaustion, his salary is only about 1/10 of what he earned when he was a department head. When he asked Sarah to work too, she retorted, "Don't joke. This isn't what I signed up for." Eventually, overworked to the point of collapse and needing hospitalization, he couldn't afford it. Sarah, disgusted, divorced him after 6 months. Now he lives alone in that shabby apartment. I return to my job. I'm teaming up with the CEO while I serve as the chairman. Though the condo is smaller than before, the view with my daughter is still the best, proving once again that luxury condos are superior.
Hey, ugly. Your child is as defective as you.
As soon as we reunited for the first time in 13 years, my ex-husband stared us down from head to toe, my daughter and I, who was sitting in the wheelchair I was pushing, before hurling those words at us. I was instantly enraged and about to hurl a barrage of foul language.
What's wrong with my daughter?
The one who spoke up was my current husband, Richard. His deep baritone voice resonated well, not just catching my attention, but also turning the heads of those around us. However, I might have been the only one to notice the icy undertone in his voice. Looking back at my ex, Michael, his face had turned pale. My name is Susan. I'm 35 years old. I'm a stay-at-home mom living with my only daughter, Maria, who's 3, and my husband, Richard, who's 3 years younger than me. The house we currently live in was originally built by Richard's parents, but soon after Richard and I got married, his grandmother passed away suddenly. Not wanting to leave his grandfather, who was now living alone in old age, to fend for himself, his parents handed over the house they had been living in to us and moved in with his grandfather. But caring for his grandfather was just one reason. They were probably also worried about Richard, who had just started his own business and wanted to help by giving us a place to live without rent. That was a major factor. I was so grateful for my in-laws' kindness. Until Maria was born, I would visit his grandfather's house every other day to help out with things like hospital visits and housework. After Maria was born, I slowed down a bit, but still made it a point to visit with Richard at least once every 2 weeks. We would help out in any way we could at the time, and sometimes, to give his grandparents a break, we would take care of his grandfather so they could go out and relax at a day spa.
I'm truly grateful for all the help you give, especially during the tough times of parenting.
She's right. Richard really married a wonderful person.
They were always thankful, but to me, no amount of help seemed enough for what Richard's family, including his parents and his twin sister, Emily, had done for me. They had saved my life, not once, but twice. Actually, Richard was my first marriage, but I had been married once before and it had ended in failure. I met my first husband, Michael, right after I had moved to New York for university. We moved into the same apartment complex on the same day. As we settled in, we shared tips about the nearest supermarkets, home improvement stores, and affordable, tasty restaurants, and quickly became friends. Michael attended a prestigious private university known for its stylish campus and frequent media appearances, quite unlike my own, which prided itself on being practical and robust. Michael himself was also tall and slender, and what you would call handsome.
There are a lot of students from metropolitan areas at my university, and people from rural areas like me can hold their heads up. But you and I are in the same boat, Susan. It's more comfortable not having to put on airs.
He would hang out in my apartment so often that eventually, we began living together like a couple. Back then, I couldn't believe I was dating a guy as good-looking as Michael. I might not have the glamour of the female students on Michael's campus, but I can be a place where Michael feels at ease. I would think, naively happy to cook, clean, and do laundry like some kind of housemaid. Of course, no good man would make his partner feel comfortable right from the start of a relationship. That comfort was just shorthand for it's comfortable for the man, a complete self-centeredness. But as they say, love is blind. I completely ignored Michael's selfishness.
If only I could quit my job. The allowance from my parents isn't enough, and my classes are getting harder.
If he said such a thing, why not move to a slightly larger apartment? Don't worry about the rent. I offered that we move into a newly built apartment near the apartment where we met, and that I pay the full rent. Michael, of course, agreed with my proposal, but for some reason, he insisted on keeping both our phone lines separate. When I questioned it,
As soon as I entered high school, my dad got stationed in England, and my mom went with him. They're pretty strict. If it gets out that we're living together, not only will my allowance stop, but I might even be told to drop out of school. You wouldn't like that, would you, Susan? And even Susan's parents, as much as they might expect us to get married eventually, would be saddened to know we're cohabitating.
Michael said with unusual seriousness. At that moment, all I could focus on was the eventually get married part, and I didn't think too deeply about the rest. However, this full-time cohabitation began to weigh heavily on me financially. Since the apartment lease was under my name, I inevitably had to cover not only the rent but also the electricity, gas, water bills, and even the landline and internet fees. Of course, at first, he said, since you're covering the rent, I'll pay more for utilities, sounding quite noble.
Sorry, Susan. I'm broke again this month because of social obligations. I need to start considering job hunting soon. So when friends or classmates invite me out for drinks, I find it hard to say no.
I ended up covering everything. I was also paying for groceries. Even the beers Michael drank after his shower came out of my wallet. Michael only contributed to the occasional pizza delivery when his friends came over. And every time he invited friends from his seminar or club to our place, he'd say, if they find out we're living together, they'll tease us for sure. I haven't told them about you, making me leave the apartment for the day. But since I spent all my time outside of university classes working part-time and doing housework, I didn't have a single friend to chat with or hang out with. So I had to spend the night in cafes and chain restaurants. The summer was tough, but waiting on a park swing in the cold winter mornings until I could afford to go home brought me to tears, wondering what I was even doing with my life. By the time we were both in our 4th year of university and seriously job hunting, I finally snapped at Michael, contribute a bit to our living expenses. You're practically a freeloader now. He immediately switched to a soothing tone.
Sorry. I was just taking advantage of you. Don't be mad.
He blatantly tried to appease me. The next day, he unexpectedly came to pick me up from my part-time job and clean the apartment, preparing dinner with flowers, wine, and cake he seemed to have gotten from a high-class supermarket. Throughout our long relationship, it was as if, for the first time, I was truly moved by Michael's thoughtfulness, which culminated in him presenting me with a ring from a famous brand at the time.
I can only afford this right now, but someday I'll buy you a diamond worth 3 months of my salary.
I remember the moment he said that and slipped the ring on my finger, feeling the happiest I've ever felt in my life, echoing a line I must have heard somewhere. However, that memory of happiness was the only one of its kind.
I'm torn between getting a job and studying abroad. But if things stay as they are, I'll rely on Susan again. It's a crucial juncture, so I want to try being alone for a while.
He said so and suddenly left me to share an apartment with his friend. I felt anxious, but I managed to hold on since he had some belongings to leave behind, and we still communicated twice a day through emails and calls. I can't mope around. I've got to hustle and find a job too. With that change in spirit, I got an offer from my first choice mid-tier trading company. But around that time, strange calls started coming in on the landline registered under Michael's name. They automatically went to voicemail, and I would absent-mindedly listen to the messages being left, which included unsettling phrases like "it'll be trouble if you don't repay by this week," and "don't take us lightly." I hurriedly contacted Michael's cell phone, but all he said was, "It's nothing, don't worry about it." Eventually, letters with words like collection notice and final warning began to arrive in the mail. I finally confronted him about it.
Stop nagging me already. After all, I've done with an ugly defect like you. The least you can do is pay up.
And just like that, he got mad and stopped answering my calls. Deceived by his constant contact, I was shocked to realize that I hadn't asked Michael for his new address. When I tried asking the university, they told me they couldn't give out that information to someone unrelated, leaving me desperate for any clue. So I started opening the cardboard boxes Michael had left in his room. Inside, I found nothing but documents from various financial companies hinting at debts, old clothes that seemed worthless, and a used-up old laptop. There was nothing about Michael's parents' address in England or any clue about where he might be living now, making me realize I was just a source of money to him. But things got worse. Not long after losing contact with Michael, two men in suits showed up at my apartment, claiming I was Michael's wife and had co-signed his debts, demanding immediate repayment. The additional blow at a time when I hadn't even recovered from the shock of being abandoned by Michael was enough to crush me. What saved me was Richard and his family, who would become my husband. That's why I wanted to do anything I could for my in-laws and husband. However, while pushing my daughter Maria's wheelchair through the mall, I unexpectedly ran into someone. It was Michael, the man who had betrayed and abandoned me 13 years ago. Realizing I was staring in disbelief, he unabashedly ogled both my daughter in the wheelchair and me, then approached us with a distasteful smirk.
Hey, ugly. Your child is as defective as you.
He said, starting off with an insult. The thought that he would insult not only me but my innocent daughter made my blood boil. But then a man stepped suddenly in between us. That was my husband, Richard.
Is there a problem with my daughter?
Richard asked, his clear voice drawing the attention of passersby who stopped to see what was happening. Yet, Michael, faced with Richard's question, turned pale and didn't retort. Maria and I were wondering what was going on and looking back and forth between Michael's and Richard's faces. But Michael, unable to bear the stares of those around him, turned to Richard.
This is a private matter. It's none of your business, is it?
He snapped back. But Richard, without a flicker of emotion, responded.
It is my business, which is why I'm speaking up. Otherwise, I wouldn't bother talking to someone like you.
He said with a snort of laughter.
Mom and Dad have something to do. Your aunt will be here soon to pick you up, so could you go ahead to her house, Maria?
Richard said, smiling at her. Hearing that, I couldn't help but exclaim, "What?" But Maria, mature for her age and not easily startled, remained calm.
Okay, just make sure you come early. It's a celebration, after all.
Soon after, Richard's sister Emily and her kids arrived to pick up Maria, allowing her to leave the scene. Then, Richard's initial momentum was nowhere to be found. He turned to Michael, who was somewhat hesitant.
Let's then move on to an adult conversation. It wouldn't be ideal to provide a free show for the public here, so let's move locations.
Slightly bending over and putting pressure on with a half smile. Michael, not particularly short but still overshadowed by Richard's nearly 6 feet 3 inch tall, agreed more readily than one might expect to change venues, perhaps preferring it to the curious stares of the onlookers. Unexpectedly, he readily agreed to Richard's suggestion and consented to change the location. The three of us took a taxi and arrived at the building where Richard's office was located. Upon pressing the elevator button and seeing the tenant directory next to it, Michael realized they were headed to a law firm, and his face turned pale once again. However, it was too late to run away, and he joined the others in the elevator. Since it was supposed to be Richard's day off, his staff were surprised to see him arrive looking stern with his wife and a guest. By the time they were shown to the back reception room, everyone seemed to have regained their composure. During this time, I managed to calm my own nerves just by looking at Richard's profile. In contrast, Michael was the only one who seemed restless and uneasy. Seeing Michael like this, Richard smirked and asked a staff member to bring over a stack of documents, placing them with a thud beside him.
Well, it's quite the coincidence to meet the person in question before showing these investigation reports to the chairman. It's quite frightening, really,
he casually remarked. Michael's complexion worsened at these words, but unfortunately, I had no idea what he was talking about. Noticing my confusion, Richard began to explain for the benefit of both Michael and myself. The chairman mentioned in the conversation earlier refers to the current chairman of a major machine tool manufacturer, a key client of Richard's office. Recently, the chairman personally summoned him. When Richard visited the head office, he was introduced to the chairman's youngest daughter, who had just returned from graduating from a university in the United States. They asked him to keep this confidential and requested that he conduct a background check on a certain man.
And there you were in the sales department, Mr. Michael Smith. Well, at that time, you introduced yourself with a different spelling in your name as Michael, though, Richard continued, still with a smirk, while Michael's face grew even paler.
As Richard continued to smirk unabatedly, Michael's complexion seemed to worsen even further. Glancing sideways at him, Richard shared a story. The president's granddaughter in New York had pledged her future to an English man she met in graduate school at the same university. This man had dropped out of a university in England just before graduating and moved to the US, where he enrolled in a local university. After finishing his degree, he worked for a while as a local employee but soon got bored and pursued further studies in graduate school. The granddaughter, a smart woman, had fallen deeply in love with this man who had supported her through the culture shock and homesickness after enrolling in a university in New York. Having completed his master's program a bit earlier, they approached her grandfather, the president, asking for his blessing for their marriage and for him to hire the man in his company. It seems the chairman himself had no clue that a man like Michael was hanging around his granddaughter during her stay in New York. However, the chairman's daughter, the executive vice president, had been introduced to the man a few times during their business trips to New York and had even met his parents, who were stationed there. The executive vice president herself thought at the time, "It's not my place to meddle in my adult daughter's love life," but felt it was too sudden when she was asked to marry him and to allow him to join their family-run company as a future executive candidate. So, after a discussion between the doting grandfather and the executive vice president, they decided to ask Richard's law firm, which had ties with their family for generations, to investigate Michael. Upon hearing this, I had a bad feeling. "You don't think that man is Michael, do you?" I asked Richard, looking directly at Michael sitting in front of me.
What's that supposed to mean? Is it bad if it's me? We've been broken up for ages. Who I marry is none of your business.
Michael snapped back even before Richard could respond. Sure, my past with Michael might as well be a dark history, and I've no interest or concern for Michael himself anymore. but I've got a mountain of grievances I'd love to air to him. We broke up, sure. But right before that, you went and filed for marriage without my consent, then made me a co-signer for your debts before skipping town. As I finished yelling, Michael looked momentarily subdued, but then he smirked.
You say that, but you wanted to marry me back then, didn't you? I just made your dream come true and asked for a little help paying off my debts in return.
He said, then nodded towards Richard.
I totally forgot about it because I went on an overseas trip. But when I got back here and checked, I was relieved to find I was single. I thought it was unlikely, but I didn't think anyone else would want someone as ugly and flawed as you. I was worried you'd be waiting for me to come back.
That's when he started talking down to me again. Furious at his condescending tone, I was about to snap again, but Richard, my husband, calmed me down once more.
Geez, I thought you might have learned something from being quiet earlier, but trash will always be trash.
With that, he smoothly began to explain how our marriage was dissolved and Michael was single again. Actually, when Michael disappeared and debt collectors came knocking, the first to offer me advice was Richard's father, my Phil. That's because I was tutoring as a part-time job, and my student at the time was Richard's twin sister, now my Sil, Emily. Emily was smart but was becoming increasingly absent from school due to being ostracized by her classmates. Hired by her worried parents, I learned the ostracism was due to her defending a friend who was also being excluded. I tried to cheer her up with studies and listening to her problems, and soon her parents and grandparents grew fond of me. They started treating me like a family member. Emily and her mother visited me to celebrate her university enrollment when the debt collectors arrived at my apartment. Shocked at my haggard appearance, she became furious upon learning I was tricked into marriage and made a co-signer for debts. Emily immediately contacted her father and grandfather, who brought me to this law firm.
From there, both my father and grandfather pulled out all the stops, running around to resolve the situation. First, they initiated mediation to invalidate the marriage that had been registered without my consent. At the same time, they negotiated with the financial institutions to invalidate my being made a co-signer for the debts. It must have been tough, but my father and grandfather are pretty savvy in this field, so in the end, everything worked out.
But I can only imagine the tremendous effort it took to invalidate the marriage through litigation against Michael, who was not even in the country and whose whereabouts were unknown, and dealing with the stubborn financial institutions was no easy feat. Meanwhile, overwhelmed by this unexpected disaster, dumped by Michael, and all the commotion causing me to graduate from university barely, I wondered how on earth I would afford the attorney's fees after losing the job offer I had secured. That's when my Phil offered me a job at this firm, saying it was okay to work here if I had nowhere else to go. Thinking of it as a way to repay them, I worked tirelessly from morning till night, even on weekends. I intended to pay the attorney's fees out of my installment salary. They received my payment only to the extent that they were not offended by the Bar Association. Thanks to their efforts, the marriage was ultimately annulled, and I was also released from being Michael's co-signer for his debts.
So, strictly speaking, you're not even Susan's ex-husband, just a blot on her life.
Michael, upon hearing this, still seemed to not fully grasp the seriousness of the situation.
Well, having a marriage record with such a woman would be boring anyway. It doesn't matter. Besides, the debt's probably statute barred by now, so it's irrelevant.
He bluffed. But at that moment, Richard burst into laughter.
This statute of limitations hasn't taken effect. I expect the collectors will be visiting you first thing next week.
Facing Michael's bewildered look, Richard dropped this bombshell? Michael himself might have thought, it's already been 13 years, so it's probably statute barred. But thanks to my Phil, after getting me released as a co-signer and the financial institutions unable to find Michael, they came up with a plan. It seems they transferred Michael's debt as it was to a debt collection agency they were in cahoots with. In cases like Michael's, where the debtor attempts to evade repayment or falls behind, making it a bad debt, financial institutions sell these uncollectible debts to debt collection agencies. This process, known as debt assignment, means that from then on, the debt collection, now handled by professionals in collections, becomes the responsibility of these agencies. While they no longer resort to illegal means of collection like in the old days, due to their extensive legal knowledge, it seems they use every possible legal method to recover debts. Naturally, the debt collection agency that purchased Michael's debt was no exception. After proceeding with various legal actions, the judgment from the lawsuit the debt collection agency filed against Michael resulted in the statute of limitations being extended by another 10 years, making the debt fully valid even now. Moreover, the total amount of debt, inflated by accumulated late fees and legal costs, has reportedly skyrocketed to several times the original amount borrowed. Hearing this, Michael momentarily looked disheartened.
I don't care about such money. If I join that company as the CEO's son-in-law, it'll all be manageable.
He retorted, undeterred. Typical shallow Michael. Despite some miscalculations, he undoubtedly assumed that becoming a son-in-law as originally planned and securing a top position in his FIL's company would make repayments seem trivial.
Do you remember what I told you earlier? Who did I say had asked me to investigate you?
Richard said, causing Michael to turn pale this time. Richard is Emily's twin brother, but during my time as Emily's tutor, we hardly spoke, only exchanging greetings when we saw each other. However, Richard became interested in me after hearing his close sister Emily praise me and express her fondness as if I were her sister. Later, unexpectedly, I started working at the office, and Richard, who had passed the bar exam while still in university, taking the fastest route to become a lawyer, and I began working together at the office. When Richard offered me I wanted to date with marriage in mind, I explained my past and refused, saying it wouldn't be fair to my benefactor-in-laws. However, Richard said he knew all about my situation with Michael from the beginning and still wanted to marry me, and he convinced me that all in-laws support us being a couple. By then, my parents back in my small town, who knew about my situation and were concerned for my future, had also given us their blessing, and Richard and I were happily married. Unlike me, who had intended to seal away my past as a dark chapter, Richard had secretly harbored a desire for revenge against Michael for years. Then a request from the chairman arrived, and at first, I thought it was someone with the same name, but upon closer investigation, I discovered that the chairman's daughter's boyfriend, Michael Smith, was the same Michael Smith who had discarded me like trash. I was about to submit a report based on this discovery first thing next week.
I guess he thought he could hide it because the spelling is different. So when the chairman's granddaughter saw your driver's license and pointed out the difference in spelling, you made up some story about being told this version of the name is Lakir, right? But in reality, you were trying to cover up your many indiscretions. After all, Smith is the most common surname. You were planning to just claim it was a case of two people with the same name if anything bad happened, weren't you?
When he said that, he sharply retorted, "Don't think such shallow tricks will work on a lawyer." I had already asked the secretary to scan the report and had emailed it to the chairman and his granddaughter. Adding further,
Since then, that finance company has occasionally sent inquiries to our office about whether they had tracked you down. So, I took the liberty of informing them about you as well.
laughing genuinely with delight, Michael suddenly collapsed to his knees.
Please, somehow convince them it was all a mistake.
He began to cry, begging the chairman and others to intercede for him. But Richard, with a mocking smile, showed no sympathy.
Why should I, as a lawyer, have to do something as morally reprehensible as telling such blatant lies to a client, especially to someone who has shown kindness, let alone to a young girl in a wheelchair who you've insulted as ugly and defective?
I firmly told Michael. The truth is, my daughter Maria got injured on her way to violin lessons when I took my eyes off her for a moment, and a high school student looking at their phone bumped into her, causing her to fall. Since then, worried about Maria, who tends to get withdrawn, Emily and her kids, knowing she won an art contest, suggested we celebrate. And today, because of Michael, what was supposed to be a joyous occasion turned into a disaster. Richard, utterly enamored with his daughter, must have been furious, not just because of Michael's past shame, but also his vile words towards Maria. Despite being coldly treated by Richard, Michael shamelessly bawled, begging, "Please, a man's future is at stake here. Are you going to ruin it?" as he desperately clung on.
Ruin someone's life? Who are you to say such a thing? The very thing you planned to do to Susan and the chairman's granddaughter was exactly that, ruining someone else's life. What goes around comes around, a giant boomerang coming right back at you. You just have to accept it.
Richard declared, brushing off Michael's attempts to cling further.
The exit is that way.
We called the building security to promptly escort Michael out of the office. As we heard Michael's crying and bitter laments fade away, Richard and I exchanged glances and shared a smile. Afterward, Michael rushed to his girlfriend, the chairman's granddaughter, making excuses, but she had already begun to harbor suspicions against him. The revelation of the truth only fueled her anger, leading her to decisively cut ties with him, refusing to see him again. However, the chairman and the executive vice president, seeing their beloved daughter and granddaughter hurt, were not content to let it end there. Michael, who had tried to reconcile by persistently following her and bombarding her with messages and emails, was reported to the police for suspicion of fraud for attempting to marry and infiltrate the company with a fake resume. Although it didn't escalate to a criminal case, a warning was issued for his stalking behavior. Still, his refusal to give up and multiple instances of stalking eventually led to his arrest and prosecution. He was sentenced to jail time, though he received probation. Once released on bail, he appeared to return to a normal life on the surface, but with a criminal record, he found it impossible to find employment anywhere outside of New York. Desperate, Michael attempted to move to England for work, but his criminal record hindered his visa application, forcing him to abandon the plan. Moreover, after his parents learned everything from the chairman and the police, they disowned him, leaving Michael truly alone. With debts looming and blacklisted from most employment, unable to even own a smartphone or renew his expired driver's license, Michael had no choice but to take any job he could get. Rumor has it, he now works for a handyman service introduced by debt collectors, living in a dorm with no privacy, working tirelessly from dawn till dusk. However, this was none of my concern, and I chose to forget about it as soon as I heard. On the other hand, Richard and I moved to an apartment near the private elementary school Maria would attend, as soon as her injury had fully healed. Ever since that incident, Maria has been hesitant to take the train, so she's been happy with the bus commute and loves the view from our high-rise apartment, seeming joyful every day. When Richard suggested selling our previous home, which was a renovated gift from my in-laws, and moving to an apartment, I was worried about what my in-laws would think. However, after they passed their house to us and started enjoying their second life in a warm coastal town, they reassured us.
What's best for your son, his wife, and our granddaughter is the most important. So don't worry about it.
In fact, they encouraged us.
Being closer to my workplace means more time with family than before, and it was definitely a good decision.
Richard seems to be enjoying the new life as much as Maria. Seeing them both so happy, I've been inspired to try something new myself.
Mike, congratulations on getting accepted, but I'm sorry, we can't afford the tuition.
I couldn't believe my husband's words and stood up forcefully from my chair. Hold on a second. That's crazy. Why can't we afford the tuition? Mike remained seated and expressionless.
That's because, I didn't expect this, so I spent it all on Ashley's beauty treatments. Makeup and fashion cost a fortune,
Turning his back to us while changing his clothes, Logan said that without a hint of remorse. All the past hardships came flooding back to me. I couldn't stand the thought that he spent so much on his niece, Ashley, while keeping Mike so restricted. I have some savings too. I scrimped and saved because you told me to. But Logan just laughed out loud when he heard that.
Oh, the money hidden in that room. I spent all of that on Ashley too. Too bad.
That's a lie. It has to be a lie.
It's your fault. You used the same PIN as our joint account. Of course, I used it.
I felt a coldness spreading through my body. I never thought Logan would find out, so I set it to the same PIN as our joint account. But knowing this doesn't change the fact that it was my money. I couldn't stand it any longer and tried to confront Logan physically. Just before I could reach him, Mike stood up from his chair and grabbed my arm to stop me. Let go, Mike, please let me go.
Mom, it's okay. Because...
He whispered in my ear, and I suddenly stopped. Reassured by Mike's words, I continued with the enrollment process. I am Olivia. After graduating from a cosmetology school, I worked at a local beauty salon. Once, I was asked to do bridal makeup for a wedding guest. That's where I met Logan. I was focused on my work and didn't pay much attention, but Logan seemed to have fallen for me at first sight. He handed me a note with his contact information as he was leaving.
Sorry if this bothers you, but please call me if you're interested.
Getting such requests wasn't unusual in my job. Since I was thinking about marriage at that time, I saw it as fate and started dating him. Things moved quickly, and eventually, I married Logan. Married life was very blissful, but there was one issue that troubled me. My relationship with my Mill, Amelia. She was close to Logan's sister-in-law, Sophia, and she always compared me to Sophia. However, aside from that, things were smooth. A year after I got married, Sophia had Ashley, and shortly after, I had Mike. Later, a baby shower was held at Logan's family home for Ashley and Mike. Everyone's attention was on Ashley. With her bright eyes, she was bound to be a beauty, resembling Logan somehow, which made everyone jest about her being Logan's child. I felt uneasy hearing this. It's not pleasant to be told that a relative's child resembles your husband. But unaware of my feelings, Amelia was completely taken with Ashley.
She's just adorable, isn't she? I can't wait to see what she becomes. Unlike the other one, unfortunately.
She glanced at Mike as she said that and snickered. This made the other relatives snicker too.
Well, the other one doesn't really matter, does it? But Amelia, I want to make her become a model.
Hearing this, Amelia's face lit up.
A model. That's a brilliant idea. But how does one become a model?
Sophia answered with a smug look.
Don't worry, I may not look like it, but I have an experience as a model. I've got connections, you know?
Indeed, Sophia had been a part-time model during her college days. She wasn't a top seller, but the experience was significant. Her casual actions and fashion sense used that experience. Working in a salon, I could tell Sophia wasn't just full talk.
Really? That's reassuring.
Modeling, right. They often appear on TV.
Yes, exactly. Some of them even become actresses. If she becomes a model, we might get famous too.
At that, the relatives suddenly got excited, showering Ashley with hopeful words. Even Logan joined in, praising Sophia. Unnoticed by anyone, I was in the corner of the room, holding Mike in my arms. Mike gazed into my face with an innocent smile. Suddenly, I felt so sorry for him that I almost cried. Sophia, basking in everyone's attention, looked very pleased.
Well, everyone, children don't grow up overnight, so let's look forward to her growth.
I know. If you need money, just say the word. I'll pay whatever it takes.
Thank you so much, Amelia.
After that, we were completely ignored by the relatives. Struggling with the favoritism towards Ashley, I worked hard to raise Mike. Logan hardly helped with childcare at all. Please, Logan, spend some time with Mike. It's not fair to him. No matter how desperately I pleaded, Logan wouldn't listen.
Quiet, I'm busy with work. You alone should be enough to take care of him.
He would always brush everything off and ignore it, leaving me to handle everything. I regretted marrying Logan but didn't have the courage to leave. The only salvation came from my parents, who helped when I was at my lowest and truly adored Mike. Their support was the only thing keeping me together. Somehow, I managed to raise Mike. 10 years later, Mike had grown into a healthy middle schooler. Logan was still disinterested in parenting, but suddenly wanted to talk when he came home from work.
Mike's still at school, right? When will he be back?
He'll be back soon. What's up? The fact that Logan was asking about Mike gave me a bad feeling.
I want him to aim for medical school. Tell him to get ready to study for that.
Logan's cold words took me aback. Wait a minute. What are you suddenly saying? Don't decide his future on your own. Annoyed by my desperate plea, Logan clicked his tongue loudly.
Listen, I'm his father. You don't get a say. Got it?
I can accept that. You've never been involved in raising him.
Shut up. That's your role, isn't it? Are you earning enough to talk back to me?
Despite what Logan said, I couldn't back down. At least tell me why medical school?
It's obvious. It's for my parents' sake. It's for the looks.
I was shocked by his response. What does he think of his own child? However, Logan continued without paying attention to me.
You get it. We're always being compared to William's family. After all, Ashley is beautiful, but Mike has nothing going for him.
He seemed to have a lot of pent-up frustration and kept spewing harsh words.
It's a disgrace, a disgrace. So, he needs to at least become smart, understand.
I clenched my fists and couldn't say a word. feeling as if being stabbed by a knife.
Well, that's how it is. I'll tell Mike myself. He's going to study hard from now on, so don't you interfere.
With that, he left the room. I was worried about my son, but couldn't defy Logan. I secretly resolved to support Mike as much as I could. Then Mike's days became filled with studying. After school, he would stay at the tutoring center until late at night, and on weekends, Logan found him a private tutor. He wasn't allowed any playtime outside of studying, and he couldn't even fully participate in school events. Whenever Mike's grades slipped even slightly, Logan would scold him mercilessly. Thanks to his efforts, Mike graduated at the top of his middle school class and entered a prestigious high school in the area. But Logan didn't ease up and ordered me to save money.
Hey, you, save money. We need it for tuition, so don't you dare spend on luxuries.
Please, let's stop this. This isn't good for anyone. Please reconsider. I desperately tried to stop Logan, but he wouldn't listen.
Shut up. Didn't I tell you not to interfere? If you keep nagging, I'll kick you out of the house.
I couldn't stand up to him after being threatened like that. But it was clear that Mike was overexerting himself. At this rate, his spirit might break. When Logan was out, I seized the moment to speak with Mike. Mike, are you okay? I need to talk to you for a minute. Mike was solving problems at his desk and glanced at me without stopping.
I'm okay for now, but I can talk long. I have to finish all this by tomorrow.
Okay, I'll make it quick. Dad says you have to go to med school, but it's not mandatory. If you want to do something else, it's okay to pursue that path. Hearing my words, Mike smiled gently.
Thanks, Mom. It's nice of you to say that, but I will aim for med school. It might make Dad recognize me, and he might start treating you better.
Mike's kindness made me want to cry. I felt ashamed of being submissive to Logan. Okay, I understand. But please don't hesitate to tell me if it gets too hard. I'm on your side, remember that.
I understand, Mom. I won't bear it all alone.
Then keep up the good work. With that, I left Mike's room and cried silently in the living room, careful not to let Mike hear me crying. In high school, Mike maintained top grades and applied to a national university's medical school. 3 years later, on the day of the results, Mike checked online. He tentatively looked at the screen, and his face brightened.
We did it, Mom. I got in.
Really? Congratulations. Mike and I shed tears of joy together. I immediately contacted Logan and went out to shop for a celebration. That evening, the dinner table was laden with lavish dishes. I talked with Mike about our hardships, waiting for Logan to come home. After 8 p.m., Logan returned from work, but he didn't look very pleased. What's wrong? Mike got into med school. Logan looked awkward.
I never really thought he'd actually pass.
He muttered to himself while taking off his suit jacket. What are you talking about? Of course, he passed. He worked so hard for it. Ignoring my confusion, Logan turned to Mike and said something unbelievable.
Mike, congratulations on your acceptance. But unfortunately, we can't afford the tuition.
I stood up from my chair, startled. Wait a minute, that's not right. Why can't we afford the tuition? Mike remained seated and expressionless.
That's because I didn't expect this to happen, so I spent it all.
On what?
Ashley's beauty treatments. She's going into modeling seriously now, so makeup and fashion cost a lot. It can't be helped.
Logan said this nonchalantly, turning his back to us while changing his clothes. All the hardships we had gone through came flooding back. I couldn't forgive him for spending on Ashley after restricting Mike so much. Enough already. What are we supposed to do now?
Shut up. Don't talk back to me like that.
Logan then glared at Mike and yelled,
What are you looking at? Didn't you hear? Figure out the tuition yourself. Don't rely on your parents.
Okay, I understand. I'll manage it myself.
Mike's face was like a mask, showing no emotion. It's okay, Mike. You don't have to worry. I stood in front of Logan to defend Mike. I have savings too. I saved desperately because you told me to. But Logan just laughed loudly upon hearing this.
Oh, the stash hidden in that room. I spent all of it on Ashley. Too bad.
No, that can't be true. It must be a lie.
If you think it's a lie, go see for yourself. It's your fault anyway. It's the same PIN you always use for the account. Of course, I used it.
I felt a coldness spread throughout my body. I never thought Logan would find it. I used the same PIN as our joint account. But even though he knows, it's still my money. I couldn't tolerate him for touching it. I can't forgive you anymore.
What? If you have complaints, say them.
I couldn't hold back and tried to grab Logan. Just before I could, Mike stood up from his chair and held my arm to stop me. Let go. Mike, please let go.
Mom, it's okay. Because...
He whispered softly, and I stopped abruptly. Logan, seemingly unaware, just smirked.
Good job, Mike. You see, she should learn from you. Talking back is useless.
Logan laughed at us and then went to take a bath. Relieved by Mike's words, I proceeded with the enrollment process. Mike had seen my struggle and had been preparing his own solutions. He had secretly started working part-time, unnoticed by Logan. I was surprised he could do that amid his busy schedule. But given his intensive study and the limited earning potential for students, Mike soon realized the difficulty of earning money and consulted my parents. My father, who worked in finance, knew a lot about that area. Apparently, Mike learned from my father how to earn money through stock trading. I wasn't aware, but Mike found out that one could start investing in stocks with as little as $100. Given his intelligence, Mike quickly learned how it worked. He invested the money he earned from his part-time job, gradually increasing his assets. Though he made money, it wasn't enough for him to be independent from our support, so Logan never found out about it. By the end of high school, Mike had managed to save enough for his college enrollment fees. I can even imagine how hard it must have been to earn that much. However, Mike had kept this a secret from everyone except my parents. Logan's parents never even gave Mike a Christmas present. Logan doted only on Ashley, spending money on her, while I covered all educational expenses with the money I earned. Had Logan known Mike was earning money, he would have taken it immediately. That's why we kept silent until the last moment. Amazed at Mike's intelligence, I felt compelled to take action. I decided to divorce Logan, believing that staying with him would only bring misery to both Mike and me. Afterward, Mike and Ashley graduated from high school, A celebratory meal was organized with Logan's family for the first time in a while. Logan's parents were probably surprised that Mike got into medical school, as everyone praised him, which made me happy. But I didn't let myself get too carried away. I was watching for an opportunity not to be missed. The graduation celebration ended successfully, and it was decided that we would gather again soon. Time flew by, and soon it was the day of the gathering. This was my chance. I brought the diaries I had been keeping and the DNA test results, knowing I couldn't show them to the two. After asking Mike and Ashley to play somewhere else, I declared in front of all the relatives that I was divorcing Logan. Please listen, everyone. I have decided to divorce Logan. The relatives fell silent, shocked by my announcement. Logan dropped his chopsticks in surprise.
What? You? Divorce? What are you suddenly talking about?
That's outrageous, even as a joke.
I placed the pile of diaries on the table. Everything that has happened to me is written here. If you want to know why, just read these. Logan smacked the pile of diaries angrily.
This is nonsense. Just complaints? What's the point?
The diaries scattered across the table. The relatives picked them up, whispering among themselves, while Logan's brother, William, read with interest.
Oh man, you're terrible. Haven't changed a bit since you were a kid.
Logan, angered by William's comment, slammed the table.
Even you're mocking me? The stuff written there is all lies, Olivia. Don't think this will end easily.
But for Mike's future, I couldn't back down. I placed the DNA test results on the table for everyone to see. Logan turned pale and tried to hide them, but William snatched them first.
Come on, don't hide it now. Better to lay it all out and feel relieved.
William smirked while reading the results, but his smile faded as he continued. The hand holding the DNA results was trembling, and the eyes were darting around.
What does this mean, Olivia?
William asked, his voice trembling. When Mike enrolled, we all gathered, right? That's when I secretly took Logan and Ashley's utensils and had their DNA tested. The results show they are parent and child. Sophia gasped and covered her mouth, visibly shaken. The revelation caused an uproar among the relatives, plunging the room into chaos.
Olivia, isn't this going too far?
On what basis did you do such a thing?
I explained the reasoning behind my suspicions to everyone. I always thought it was strange. Logan doted on Ashley more than Mike, and Ashley closely resembles Logan. That's why I thought they were having an affair. Sophia glared at me and threw a diary at me.
Don't make baseless accusations. Isn't this just a vendetta?
That's why I provided evidence. I'm fed up with this favoritism. I'm taking this chance to sever ties with all of you. My declaration of disownment incensed the relatives. The anger of Logan's parents was particularly intense.
It's unacceptable. Mike's medical school acceptance is our pride.
Yes, and now you talk of severance. What will the neighbors think? It looks bad for us.
I listened to Logan's parents' words with disdain. They had always favored Ashley and did nothing for Mike. Yet now they claimed pride in his achievement. It was too convenient. I don't care about your circumstances. What about Logan and Sophia's situation? All eyes turned to Logan and Sophia.
This is fake. She's framing us because we didn't pay attention to her.
Sophia desperately blurted out her words, and Logan joined in.
She's right, brother. Trust me, I wouldn't do such a thing. And the DNA was taken without consent. This proves nothing.
The relatives sided with Logan, and they started blaming us.
Olivia, you've done something outrageous. This isn't a laughing matter.
If you admit it now, apologize right here with him. We can let it go then.
I maintained a firm demeanor. Unfortunately, that DNA test is genuine. I have no reason to apologize. William glared at Logan, irritated by my stance.
You keep making a fool of us. Logan, say something. It's your responsibility too.
I'll listen to your complaints at home. So apologize now. Otherwise, you're troubling me and everyone.
Trying to save his own skin, Logan attempted to talk me down. If you keep saying it's fake, let's do another test with William, Logan, and Ashley. Then even William can be sure.
Enough already, Sophia exclaimed.
William gestured for her to calm down.
Indeed. We need to settle this once and for all. Let's test again.
But Logan and Sophia looked awkwardly at each other. Without noticing, Logan's father, Ethan, slammed the table.
Enough. Olivia, I will sue you for defamation. Prepare to pay a hefty compensation. Now get out.
So, I left the scene. Later, Ethan had Ashley and Logan retested. To prove my claims false, hiring a lawyer at great expense, he was desperate to make me apologize. A week later, we were summoned to Logan's family home again, where Ethan held the envelope with the DNA results.
Now that everyone is here, let's open this.
He then opened the envelope and began reading the DNA results. Amelia was smirking maliciously, already convinced of the lie.
Olivia, are you ready to apologize on your knees?
William crossed his arms, glaring at me, while Ethan remained silent. His face turning red as he continued to read the DNA results. Due to the prolonged silence, Amelia looked at him with suspicion.
What's taking so long? Hurry up and tell us the results.
William also looked anxiously towards Ethan, who sighed deeply and placed the DNA results on the table.
It's confirmed that Ashley and Logan are parent and child.
Amelia screamed in shock.
What? So, Sophia and Logan were really having an affair?
William was so angry he couldn't speak, just clenched his fists tightly.
Logan, explain yourself. Make us understand.
A vein throbbed on Ethan's forehead. Next to a sweating Logan who looked down, Sophia covered her face and collapsed on the table. An awkward silence lingered on. And it was Sophia who broke the silence.
It's not my fault. It's Logan's fault.
She tearfully explained how the affair started. Feeling lonely because Logan's brother, William, was always busy with work, she became closer to Logan as she complained, and eventually she got pregnant with Ashley. She confessed they concocted a plan to keep it secret from their partners. William, upon hearing this, lunged at Logan.
You. How could you act so normal all this time? You must have been mocking me inside.
Logan, shaken by William, desperately tried to justify himself.
I wasn't mocking. I got carried away. I respect you, brother. I thought Ashley was cute, and I felt responsible, so I wanted to raise her properly.
Hearing this, I sighed deeply, feeling more pity than anger.
Logan's parents seemed utterly disgusted by their son's disgrace.
What a shameful display. Sophia, we're getting a divorce. Pack your things and leave once we get home.
Sophia looked up and clung to William.
Wait, it was just a moment of confusion. I love you.
But William looked at her with contempt.
You might say that, but I can no longer love you.
Sophia wailed and curled up on the floor. Ethan coldly observed.
This is unprecedented. Logan, Sophia, you both are a disgrace to our family. Don't ever appear before me again.
Thus, Logan, Sophia, and Ashley were ostracized. I proceeded with the divorce from Logan, who was stalling. So I consulted my father for a competent lawyer. The lawyer's efforts finally settled the divorce. Logan's resistance increased the settlement, and he ended up paying more alimony and child support than average. I plan to claim the child support for Mike's college expenses. Sophia's divorce with William was finalized, and she and Ashley began living with Logan. Their life seemed much harder than before. Ashley and I started talking more, and she became closer to Mike.
I was also pressured by my parents and relatives to become a model, which was tough. This situation was shocking, but I feel relieved now.
Ashley also kept in contact with William, through whom we learned about the aftermath at Logan's family home. Amelia, unable to contain her shock, portrayed herself as a tragic heroine to the neighbors, exposing the family's shame. This led to them being ridiculed. As it turned out, the neighbors disliked Logan's family, seizing the opportunity to mock them. Consequently, Logan's parents, their pride wounded, became recluses in their own home. And just like that, they abandoned their house overnight and moved somewhere else. But since we were estranged, it no longer concerned me. Mike and I moved back to my parents' house. Mike is thoroughly enjoying his university life, focusing on his studies while also engaging in part-time work and club activities. It seems he even has a girlfriend now, and he's having the time of his life. I also rented a property from my parents and opened a cooking school there. Having my own school has been a long-held dream, so I'm truly happy. Ashley seemed interested in this kind of work and asked to be hired as a part-time employee. I hired her at Mike's request, and she's been a great help, working very hard. After a long period of struggle, everything has turned out well. Now, earning a living doing what I love, I am very content.